Welcome to week 2 of our worship series. Today we are joined by another worship leader, the famous Nathan Blackley. Nate,
Famous.
I'm so
Yeah, I
glad you're
don't
here.
know. Well,
I'm
it's an
so
honor.
glad you're
Yeah,
here.
it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, so we've been working through this whole series, and last week we talked to Joel Hensley, and we kind of were talking about the theology of worship.
Yeah, sure.
And so this week we're kind of talking a little bit more about the practicality of worship and how there's 5 truths in this sermon
Hmm.
about. I don't know what they're about. Let me see. Worship is not optional; something we have to do. Worship, the worship that God seeks. Worship is a response. Worship is not part time. Worship is more than singing. So we go through all of that, and so I just am so grateful that you're here to
Yeah,
kind of, as a worship leader, is that a big task? Do you feel the weight of what it means to like lead God's people in worship?
definitely. I think it's one of those things that we're very obviously called to do in the Bible, and so I think it would be weird to not kind of take on some weight in that. Like this is how one of the ways that people communicate to God,
Yeah.
and being able to kind of stand there alongside people, giving them a little bit of just like a blueprint of like, here's some things that you can say to God. Here's some things that we're thankful for today. I definitely think that that's something that like weighs on you in a good way.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly important, and it's just an honor to be able to stand alongside our church and be able to do that together.
At what point in your story, like
Mhm.
God's working in your life? Because the first point is worship is not optional. It's something that
Sure.
we have to do, right? I guess at what point did that reality come truth for you? So much so that you actually decided, oh, this is more than just something I do. This is something
Mhm.
I should do with my whole life.
Yeah, yeah, wow, that's good. I think I grew up in the church,
Yeah.
and so I think you kind of always hear that a lot. And so I definitely did growing up as like worship is your lifestyle, and you don't really like practically get how to apply that all the time.
Right.
And I think kind of the way that I've started to look at it, and I don't know if I could pinpoint an exact time of when I started to realize this, but I do know that when I started to realize it, kind of the practical application for me was every single thing that I do, I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities, and I'm going to do it as if I'm doing this for God and not for man. It says Colossians 3:23,
Hmm.
that's kind of how I believe that even in the mundane, even in the everyday things that you have to do, there's a way to glorify God in it, and there's a way to worship God in it. And
Yeah.
that's what I try to do.
That's an interesting concept because actually in the sermon, one of the main points that they talk about is that worship is not a part-time,
Yeah,
that it's something that you have to do all of the time.
definitely.
And that I think out of all of the points in the sermon, that's the one that's got me feeling the most reflection.
Yeah, right.
And I wonder, just as a professional worship person,
Yeah.
what is your day? Are you just like walking around like Joey, just singing all the time?
No, I
Or
am I am not like Joey. He's a rare breed.
yeah,
You can always
if you ever come to the church, if you ever are at a church where Joey's just, literally just walking down the hallway
yeah,
singing his little heart out.
you'll know if he's there.
Yeah, the
You'll
only
always know.
weirder thing is Dawson in the bathroom singing with his guitar. So, I mean, our worship leaders are
Yeah.
worshiping all the
Hey,
time.
that's creatives for you. That's
Yeah.
creatives for
But
you.
you like, what is like your daily worship time like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that mine probably looks very similar to a lot of other people too, but kind of the way that, I like to be able to start my day is time in the Word and time
Yeah.
spent in prayer with God. And a lot of people like kind of accompany that with worship music playing in the background. I
Right.
can't do that. I will just only focus on the music just because I love music a lot.
Yeah.
But being able to spend the first few hours of my day or the first few minutes even, just in time with God and spending it in the presence of God, knowingly, and just being able to dive deep into His Word, spend time in prayer is always a way to start
So
your day with
you
worship.
equate worship with like more than just the singing part of it. You
Absolutely,
think that your quiet time is worship, your prayer time is worship.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What is that? I mean, how practically does that play out for me?
Hmm.
Right? What does that mean for me?
Yeah, I think it's the same exact thing. I think that, there's a misconception sometimes in the church that worship can only be done through song. And it's like, yes, of course it can be done through song, but that's not the only avenue that we can worship. And, kind of like I was saying a little bit ago, is you're supposed to worship with your life.
Yeah.
And so with doing that, the really big part of that is being able to approach every single thing that you do glorifying God.
Yeah.
And a really good way to do that is through prayer. And of course, that's connection with God.
Glorifying God.
Mhm.
That's your definition of worship.
I would say my definition of worship is it's our response to who God is and what
Yeah.
He has done for us. And so I think through that, we're glorifying Him.
And it happens in everything that you do
Absolutely.
throughout your day and all of those things. Are there ever songs when you guys are putting the song list together, and I see you sometimes in the back room and you're making the tracks,
Uh-huh.
and it seems like this unending task for you. Do you ever, are you like going through the lyrics of these songs, and have you ever thought, oh, this doesn't meet the rubric, this doesn't meet the, is not really
Yeah.
glorifying God?
Yeah, right. No, I think there's definitely been songs that's one of the things that we really take a lot of pride and spend a lot of time doing is figuring out what we want our church to sing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different songs that we could be singing, but the ones that we are singing and we do sing and have sung in the past have been carefully gone through, and we make sure that everything is correct theologically. We make sure everything makes sense. Sometimes it can be perfectly said, theologically,
Yeah.
but it is hard to comprehend sometimes. So we're always trying to make sure it is theologically sound, that it's simple, that people can understand. We find a lot of the times that, there's a time in worship to be using this beautiful language that's very artistic. And then there's sometimes too where we just feel like being able to say like, God, you are holy, God, you are
Yeah.
good, like in that simple language is really, really something that resonates with our church
Yeah.
and with us too.
For sure. For sure. I think like the heart of worship is just really incredible. And worship has this way of pulling you out of yourself
Hmm.
and kind of really redirecting and focusing your thoughts on God. But there's also this temptation where people will come to church and they'll be like, oh, well, worship wasn't good unless I'm in tears.
Yeah, right.
Oh, like how do you cope with that?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
No, I think it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
For us as worship leaders, like it's very easy, and we
Are you
talk
guys
about
like
this.
sitting in the back room like, oh, they're gonna start crying right here. This is the
No,
moment.
no, I think for us as worship leaders, we honestly kind of try to distance ourselves from that a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of about being able to kind of read the room and see what God is doing in the room, just to be able to, accomplish what we feel like He's equipped us with, and the template for how we're going to approach giving Him glory and responding to Him that morning. We want to be mindful of how the things in the room are going. Like, oh man, I think if we stopped down right here and took some time to pray for this, like, I think that would really help us
Yeah.
get to the main point of what we're trying to get to today. But I think for us, it's something that we talk a lot about as a worship staff, is not taking the engagement in the room and applying that to this is how good worship went for that day.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times where we've had different worship services where I come off stage and I'm like, man, I don't really know how the engagement was. Like, I don't know if that felt as good as I thought it did or whatever. And then a couple, minutes later, we're in the lobby and people are coming up to us saying like, "Wow, that was so good for me. I really felt like close to God in that time." And it's like
Yeah.
you can't really ever know how it's hitting people and how things are resonating with people
Yeah.
in that tangible way every time. But we just trust
Is
at
it
that point.
is it difficult to simultaneously like be a worshiper and be a worship leader? Like how do you not just be like, I know it's supposed to be leading these, but I need to
Uh-huh.
go over here and pray
Yeah, no,
and good
that's
luck.
so good.
Is there a balance there? Or?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a balance. We also want this to be our personal worship time with God too.
Right.
It just happens that we're on stage doing it. But I think there's times during the week where those personal worship times can go a little bit deeper and can go a little bit more personalized, which is great. And so while we're on stage, we are trying to have that personal interaction with God, but also keeping at the back of our
Mhm.
minds, like, we're trying to help other people encounter God, and we're trying
Yeah.
to help other people understand that He is faithful and that He is good and that He is holy. And it's not necessarily just a moment to be introspective the entire time. Obviously,
Right.
there's moments where you can take and just kind of take a few minutes and just really thank God for what He's doing in your life. But at the end of the day, we do have to know that this isn't just about us. It's also about
Yeah.
allowing and kind of helping our people step into a moment with God to
Right.
where they can stand in awe of who our Creator is.
So right now, people are watching this video in their community groups, and they're sitting around and they'll have listened to the sermon
Hmm.
and they're answering all of these questions. And I guess there's this one reality that keeps popping up in that, we're called to be worshipers and we're supposed to be worshiping all the time. And last week we talked to Joel Hensley, and he was just saying how he has to cultivate that inside of him, because the thought of being a worshiper all the time, like if I have to be aware of it or I'm constantly thinking about it, it seems difficult
Yeah.
to kind of be in that mindset. And the way that Joel cultivates that is through fasting.
Mm.
And he says, like, if you're trying to develop hunger inside of you, you do that by fasting.
Yeah, that's really
And
good.
so he's a big faster. How do you, or what advice do you have for the people in our church, in our community, to help them live a life that is cultivating that desire to be a full-time worshiper?
Yeah,
Or
that's
how do
such a
you
good
experience
question.
that in your own life?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think for me, like it's all about being able to kind of look back on monuments that I've built from the past. And what I mean by that is, anytime in history you see a people group build a monument of something, it's because they want to remember what happened there or remember the person that
Oh,
led
like
them through
piling
something.
stones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think for me, that's kind of how I cultivate that is I'm always trying to remember what God has done for me and
Yeah.
what God has brought me through in the past. And that gives me the encouragement and the confidence to be able to step into every single day and say, yeah, I've seen you move like this in the past.
Mm,
What reason do I have to think my current circumstance is any different? That you are any different? That you're not going to continue to provide for me? You're
yeah.
not going to continue to be faithful? You're not going to continue to put your power on display in my life? And that for me just like really stirs my affections for God,
Amen. Yeah.
and just allows me to kind of step into that and just know that throughout my day, like I'm not taking a step that He doesn't know about, and I'm not thinking a thought that He doesn't know about. And for me, it kind of puts me at ease a little bit more than stress me out about living a life full of worship, just because I know that every single moment and every single situation that I find myself in, as long as I'm looking to Him
Hmm.
and introspectively thinking about the things that He has brought me through and about His goodness, I know that I'm living a life that is pointing towards God, and I'm sitting in worship and gratitude for what He has done for me in those
Amen.
moments.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks, Nate, for being here with us
Yeah.
today. And thank you guys for watching this video and making the commitment to be part of a community group. Right now, your community group leader is going to ask you some questions that kind of fit along with this other stuff. And I would just ask the question, what are you doing to cultivate this idea of worship in your own life? And what does it mean to you to be a full-time worshiper? I think that those are valuable questions to spend time talking about. We love you guys. We'll see you next week.